not English. Okay, today, Shadowsong by S.J. Jones. I have already done its predecessor, Wintersong. Not the biggest fan. As much as I want to be a fan of this series, I'm not. I'm sorry. I do think that Shadowsong is the stronger of the two. And it's probably because she actually explores all of the interesting concepts that she introduced in Wintersong. But you know what? Too little, too late. You can't create interest and then never fulfill it. Oh, what is... Oh, my hair. Can I just... But Shadowsong, it picks up where Wintersong left off. If you didn't see my review of Wintersong, please go look at it. In case you're not going to take that time, a brief overview. Wintersong revolves around a young woman named Elizabeth who sacrifices herself to the underground in order to become the Goblin Queen to save the world. However, she ends up leaving the underground. With that, basically the world begins to die. However, in leaving the underground, in abdicating her role as the Goblin Queen, it is with the intent of saving the Goblin King with whom she has fallen in love. However, by Shadowsong, do you think she's done that? Absolutely not. I don't actually know how much time has passed. I think it's been a couple months. And that's one of my problems that I had with Wintersong is like, she has a goal, yet she doesn't do anything about it until the last minute. Her family owns an inn and it is failing. And then her grandmother, Constanza, who believes in the Goblin King, believes in all of that myth and lore, takes all of the salt in the inn in order to ward off the holy host, in order to ward off all the supernatural badness that's about to happen, and fills her room with it, which I kind of love that image, but I'm also struggling to picture it because I'm like, how much salt is that? And so now Elisabetta has to go get salt from the local church. And when she's there, she realizes a whole lot of weirdness has happened over the centuries. Like, people disappear, this, that, the other. Even with her own family, things are not as it should be. Then she gets back to the inn, and this writer approaches her with a bag of money and a letter. And it turns out that she has a mysterious benefactor, because her brother Yosef, who is a violin prodigy, has gone off on his grand tour. He is completely MIA, unreachable. He will not respond to any of her letters, but he has been playing the Wedding Night Sonata, which is something she had composed while in the underground. And from this, her mysterious benefactor has tried to track her down because he wants her to continue composing. So this mysterious benefactor, I forget his first name, but it's the Prohaskas. So he brings her and Kata, her sister, to Vienna, as well as Yosef, and I'm not sure how to term Francois. So they are, I don't know if they're necessarily lovers. And this is what my problem is. Minor spoiler, if you saw my review before, it's not a spoiler at all. Yosef is actually a changeling. So with that, he does not possess the same capacity to love, which, can I say, I do not understand this, in the scope of his relationship with Leisl. Throughout Wintersong, we are led to believe they have this unbreakable bond. They are both the gardeners of each other's hearts. Yet, we get deeper into Shadowsong, and he's like, well, I know what love is, but I can't really love the way I'm supposed to. I've never even loved my little sister that way. I'm like, that is exactly the opposite of what I was led to believe. He refers to Francois as his beloved, but he doesn't necessarily love Francois. He sees the good characteristics about Francois and why Francois should be loved. So I don't really know what their relationship is. I don't think it's a physical relationship. I don't think there's even much of an emotional relationship, but we'll just call Francois his beloved. But Francois is the pianist who was brought along when Master Antonius came in the first novel to watch Joseph play in order to determine if Joseph, yes, should go about the world displaying his talents. What we learn is Francois and Joseph are playing, and Master Antonius goes to bed one night and he dies. And there have been a lot of mysterious deaths, a lot of being elf-touched, in which I don't quite know who's doing the killing. We have the mysterious benefactors, so we're led to believe it's the husband, but it's actually the wife. And so we realize that the wife was the one present when Master Antonius dies. I don't think she actually killed him. I think she sets it up for the Holy Host. Not clear. In any case, he dies, and Francois, who's black, is like, not a good situation for me. And then Joseph, who's kind of like walking catatonic, and they're like, well, we should probably get out of here. So they are also brought to Vienna. The problem is that Joseph is under the impression, which I don't know why, Joseph is under the impression that Elizabeth is coming to take him back to Bavaria. I think that's where they're from. I keep wanting to call it Bulgaria. It's not Bulgaria. That's Harry Potter. Leisl, or Elizabeth, she had been writing to Joseph, and she was feeling super guilty because when she had been Goblin Queen for that 1 year, she hadn't kept in touch the way that she promised she would, and so yeah, she's writing, but she's also feeling guilty because she had promised him that she would compose, and she's not composing because, again, that's one more thing she's supposed to be doing, yet she doesn't. And then all of a sudden, she gets this letter from Joseph saying, Master Antonius is dead, come as fast as you can. So I guess, and this was Francois. Francois wrote the letter. So I don't know where Joseph is getting this idea that Leisl is coming to get him. In any case, they end up in Vienna, and he is so upset with her. And I'm like, I don't understand why you're upset with her. For one, after Master Antonius dies, he and Francois go and live in a brothel. And he is, again, walking catatonic. And all he does is play his violin, and you know, like, I accept some of this because he, as a changeling, he's not supposed to be that far from the Goblin Grove, which is back where, in Bavaria, where he's from. And so I could understand where, I guess, he could lose his life force because he's not where he's supposed to be. However, it just doesn't line up with other characters who are also changelings and are successfully thriving, or even, you know, he has Leisl's love, so just like with her as the Goblin Queen, why isn't that sustaining him the way it's supposed to be sustaining him? Anyways, but they've been living in this brothel, and he is playing his violin, and apparently every time he plays his violin, he sees this figure in the mirror. Some creature, some mischief maker has been creating mischief within this brothel house, and he is like, oh, I know who it is, blah, blah, blah. It's basically this creature in the mirror that I guess comes out to play when he plays his violin. Somehow, all of this, I guess he's sustained by the fact that his sister is going to rescue him. And then when she doesn't rescue him, he is so upset with her. But I'm like, what have you done? I know you're not very good with writing, but like, why didn't you ever write to her, even if she never wrote to you? Because apparently they'd left the address that she thought they were at, so he never got her letters. Well, you know what? If she's so important to you, why aren't you writing to her? I think he's really selfish, honestly. In any case, they get to Vienna, and they're living in this house that the Prohaskas have set up for them, and Keita, she was a very one-dimensional character in Wintersong. She's a bit more two-dimensional here, although I don't quite understand how she got that way. I still like her, I just don't understand how she got that way. But she's a seamstress, and so which again, I don't understand. If they have all this money from their benefactors, why is she taking on work for money? But the Prohaskas are essentially an infamous couple, and they always throw this infamous ball. Naturally, this foursome is invited, and really it's a ruse in order to kidnap Yosef and Elisabetta. I don't know if they realize what Yosef is, or I don't know why they want to include him in the kidnapping, because she is their main goal, as she was the Goblin Queen. But anyway, so yeah, Keita sews in these gorgeous outfits. They go. Elisabeth has this supernatural encounter with one of her goblin girl attendants from when she'd been Goblin Queen, and it's essentially like warning her, danger, Will Robinson, things are happening because you're no longer Goblin Queen and your Goblin King is going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And then she is brought to actually, accompany Yosef as they play the Wedding Night Sonata. They're drugged, and then they are whisked off to the Prohaska's country house, Snoven, or country estate, Snoven. I think one thing for me that made Shadowsong more successful is it does not solely focus on Leisl. There are multiple perspectives, and it works for me because I do not connect with Leisl at all. She's a little bit better in this book, but still I do not understand her motives. I don't quite understand her goals in the entire book. I don't feel like she really develops that much. She's pretty whiny. She never does what you think she's supposed to be doing. And then, of course, that is just supposed to keep the story going because she's not achieving anything. Because that sounds like a recipe for success, don't you think? But we get glimpses into what's going on with the Goblin King as he's losing his humanity without having a Goblin Queen. We get glimpses into what's going on with Keita and Francois. We get a little bit of Yosef, which I think we needed more of, because he is, as much as I don't like Leisl, because I feel like she's underdeveloped, she's not sympathetic, she's not interesting, Yosef makes me flat out angry because he has so much potential. Yet, we are not given nearly enough of him to truly understand why he thinks and feels the way he does. And then all of a sudden, there it is, and we're supposed to accept it. But we also, before the foursome comes to Vienna, we get a little bit of a look into what's going on with Yosef and Francois. So I think the moving about between different viewpoints. Oh, and actually my very favorite part is we're getting the background of the Goblin King. I'm a little disappointed where that leaves off because I didn't feel like it was fully formed, but I thought that was the writing that I was expecting throughout the entire novel, because we get emotion, we get mystique, we get really good storytelling in which you connect to the characters and you're driven forward because you want to know what's going to happen next. You want to know how they're going to develop, what's going to happen. And that's simply not what we get with the overall storytelling. And for me, that's disappointing because she's obviously capable of it. So why is it she can only achieve it in spurts? Like, why couldn't she have applied that kind of writing to the whole series? Anyways, Yosef and Elisabeth are at Snoven. One thing I really enjoyed is, the Prohaskas, you don't know what to think about them. Are they good? Are they bad? They are claiming that they are saving these two from the Holy Host. Bad things are happening because there is no Goblin Queen. And so the woman, what is her name? I don't know why I can't remember her name. We're just going with the Count and the Countess. So the Countess If you saw my first review of Wintersong, you know about the Brave Maiden. The Countess is a direct descendant of the Brave Maiden, and so she has a magical protection in her blood from the Holy Host. And the Holy Host is essentially like the old laws, because the old laws state there has to be a Goblin King, and I think within that there has to be a Goblin Queen. I think that's actually wrong, because the initial Goblin King, he did take on a Goblin Queen. However, so here's a major spoiler. The whole deal with the Goblin Queen, or with the Brave Maiden, the original Goblin Queen, is that she was brought in to be the Goblin Queen, fell in love with the Goblin King, but I guess, so in Wintersong, she's portrayed to be someone incredibly brave, someone who fought for what she wanted and rescued herself and the Goblin King. So someone to emulate, okay? In Shadowsong, she is portrayed as really selfish, where he brought her in, she fell in love, and then she essentially stole him away from his life. Not really explain what he thought about it. But in order for things to continue the way they were, she needed to find a new Goblin King. So she does. She tricks some other guy into becoming the Goblin King, but because he wasn't in it with his full heart the way the original Goblin King was, he needed a queen. So then we get to where we are now, and that cycle perpetuates itself, where the Goblin King is like, I don't want this anymore, so I'm gonna find a new king. And so another person is tricked, then another maiden is brought in, and these maidens, they're not usually worthwhile characters. They don't have a lot of substance to them, so they don't last long, so we just keep getting new ones, I guess. I'm not quite clear on that. There's a lot that I'm not clear on, but we're gonna move on. So we get to the end of this book, and here's a spoiler. Elisabeth just wants to save her Goblin King. She wants to save him, and she wants to save Yosef. But what happens is she can't really do both. And so Yosef becomes the new Goblin King, and I guess because he's in it for the right reasons, like he is already part of the underground, he understands what it means to love. He doesn't necessarily have to have a queen. So all of that to say, the old laws basically just say, we need a sacrifice, we need a Goblin King, we don't have our sacrifice, so we're gonna come after you because you were supposed to be the sacrifice. That is what the Count and Countess are saying, is we're bringing you to Snowven so we can protect you. Again, why they had to bring Yosef, I don't know, except for the sake that we need Yosef in the story. The Countess is taking Elisabeth around the estates, and she's starting to realize, like, I've seen this place before, and it turns out that she's seen it, because when she was in the underground, she saw it in the Goblin King's dreams. Now we're connecting things. We're realizing that this could very well be where the Goblin King came from, and that is where his storyline comes in. And again, the theme of this review is I don't get it. I just don't get it. And so I don't know how old the Goblin King is, because he seemed to have grown up with Elisabeth in Wintersong. Although I don't know if that was an illusion, because when she was young, he was gonna be young, but in actuality, he just doesn't age. So I don't really know when his story is taking place, but he is basically this wild thing that people keep trying to kill and they can't kill him, and he does eventually form an ally with a brother, like a monk, and then again the townspeople try to kill him, and then these two escape, and then somehow they make it to this monastery that is in Snowven Estates, or that is in Snowven. I don't really understand how it all works out. But again, I told you that was the theme. I just don't understand. And that's the problem I have with these two books, is I feel like she expects a whole lot from her readers. she doesn't want to tell us things because she wants us to figure it out for ourselves. And sometimes, well, actually most of the time, all the time, I don't feel like it's done well. I feel like it's heavy, which is why I like having these other perspectives come in, because it does lighten it a little bit. But anywho, poppies are a big symbol, and we learn that poppies are actually the dead souls of the sacrificed, of the faithful. So the faithful are essentially those that have been touched by the underground. They're the best sacrifices to make, and that is what the Prohaskas have been doing, because of what the brave maiden did in stealing the Goblin King. There has to be constant sacrifice in order to keep the old laws and the Holy Host from coming after her and her family lineage. I love that part. I felt like, again, underdeveloped, came in a little bit too late. There was so much introduced in Wintersong that was then explained in Shadowsong, that you are also adding to new elements from Shadowsong. It was just overwhelming. Like, I wish more had been unpacked in Wintersong so that it didn't all hit us at once in Shadowsong. Not that they're bad ideas. It was just a lot. Yosef. He's a character that I felt like we could have done so much more with him knowing he was a changeling. But again, he's largely forgotten until this one moment where he gets upset with Leisl. Because when she was Goblin Queen and then wasn't Goblin Queen, she didn't tell him about it. I don't know why she didn't tell him, and he's upset that she told Keita instead. But she's like, oh, hello, Keita was there. Keita's the reason I became Goblin Queen, because I was trying to save her life from becoming the Goblin Queen. And so they have this huge fight, because then she ends up telling him that he's a changeling. You know, it's probably akin to learning that you're adopted. I can understand why that would upset him. But he stomps away and he's like, I'm not who you say I am. Quit calling me my name. I'm like, I don't understand this. She obviously loves you. Whether you're a changeling or not, she gave you a name. She has loved you your entire life. So why are we having a temper tantrum? So then he goes and he ends up getting taken into the underground. And we get one scene before that, which is a pity party. Just saying, I don't know how to love anybody. I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm here. Why am I so sad? Could be akin to depression, honestly. It could be a really great symbol. Like, Dementors are representative of depression in Harry Potter. Like, you know what? Like, maybe that's just what this is representative of. Somebody who is taken from his home and he just can't handle it, like, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that's the case. I just feel like she expected us to get more than she gave. So yeah, now he's in the underground, and then Elisabeth is like, gotta go get him, gotta go save my king. And we're also given things where she's trying to contact Keita, who she has been told that Keita and Francois are safe. And yes, they are indeed safe. They are actually safer than she is, because what she doesn't know is that the Countess wants to sacrifice her as well. But Keita and Francois have been taken in by the faithful. And this is where I don't understand Yosef, because the changeling that takes them in is like, well, I was given a name, ergo I can survive outside of the underground. So is Yosef. Like, Elisabeth gave him the name Zeppel. So it's not just like the name of the child that he took over and the name that she's always associated him with. Like, she gave him essentially a pet name, something that was special only to him. So I don't understand, if they both have names, if they've both been given homes amongst people that they belong and are loved by, why one can flourish and one cannot. Because he didn't seem to be flourishing that much even when he was close to the Goblin Grove. the faithful have ways of contacting others. And so finally they contact Leisl through a mirror, and they're like, this is the problem. And so then, yes, she is almost immediately approached by the Count and the Countess, and she's like, see ya. So she finagles her way into the underground by giving up her sanity, which is something I don't quite understand, because can we start counting how many times I've said understand? Like, I don't mind the fact that she has to give up a part of her in order to get to the underground. I think that's a great idea. And I guess this is not necessarily something that I don't understand, but it's just something that I don't get, which I know is synonymous to understand. But I guess I didn't think it was necessarily. That's where I was going, but that doesn't. I just didn't think it was necessary. I don't feel like it worked very well, because I didn't feel like her giving up her sanity was any different than her not having her sanity. The underground was so chaotic, and sure, she put up less of a fight. She accepted things because she didn't have her sanity, but it didn't feel like she was insane as much as she was just ridiculous. She gets to the underground and she confronts the Holy Host, and she sees the transformation that her austere young man has made into this demon creature, which demon creature's really awesome. Like, again, anything involving the underground, Jones did an exceptional job with. Holy Host says, you gotta choose him or him, and she's like, you know what, actually I think I'm just gonna choose me. So she kills herself. She's in this limbo, and then we're thrown back to the chamber where the Holy Host and, you know, their Erlkonig, or, you know, the Goblin King and Yosef are, and Yosef's like coming back to his humanity, and he's saying, why didn't you stop her? Like, we've got to save her. And in the end, as I said, Yosef volunteers to be the Goblin King, to be their Erlkonig. So this, I just can't. So the Goblin King, I guess at some point had been raised by wolves. And so when Elisabeth has killed herself, and now Yosef and the Erlkonig, or the Goblin King, are having to figure out how to save her, and then Yosef decides to be Goblin King. Well, now we've got to deal with the old Goblin King. Like, we got to name him. And he's like, well, you always known my name. And she says, no, I don't know your name. He's like, I gave it to you way back when. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she just doesn't get it. She has no sense, which is when I just can't connect with her, because she's portrayed as very rational, very sensible, yet she never gets anything. Like, everything goes way over her head. She didn't. Finally, she remembers a name she'd seen etched into, I guess, the frame of a window when she'd visited that monastery. And so she's like, oh my gosh, I know your name. It's Wolfgang. And I'm like, first off, that name bothers me. I don't know what it is about it, but I'm like, that sounds awfully pretentious. But I was like, who carved his name in the lintel? And why did you never, like, figure out his name yourself? How is this all connecting? Again, it's just, in many ways, her writing is very convoluted. It's so heavy with meaning that my brain hurts. I'm too tired just to put pieces together in order to put more pieces together and figure out, oh, yeah, that's where that was coming from. Yeah, Leisl and Wolfgang go back to Bavaria, and Kata, I think she stays wherever she is with Francois, and we get an epilogue, and we're done. So this is another book that, it could have been so good. And it was so much better than Winter Song. I mean, really, as much as I complain about the weight of the writing and all the stuff in there that we have to figure out and keep straight, she has really good elements. I enjoyed the mystery, the mystique of the Prohaskas and of what's good, what's bad, what to believe, what not to believe. I really enjoyed seeing Wolfgang's past unravel. Although, so what was confusing or dissatisfying to me is we never got to see him become the Goblin King. We know that obviously he's approached by a mysterious stranger and he's promised things that he wants in order to become the Goblin King. And of course, he never quite understands the full meaning of what that sacrifice is until afterwards, which is when he's like, I don't want to be Goblin King anymore. But we get him from being a baby, and bad things are happening in this town. So the townspeople are like, oh, it's that baby. We gotta sacrifice the baby. They burn down the monastery. And so this is confusing too, because we know the entire time that the Goblin King had a mentor, because this is how he learned to play the violin. So he had this mentor called Brother Mayhew. And so I'm like, well, if the monastery and everybody inside but you was burned down when you were very young, where did Brother Mayhew come from? And then we see, and this is another thing that I didn't quite like. So we get this small little story about a woodcutter, not a woodcutter, like a woodworker in this one town who, his wife and unborn baby died to something, and that same disease claims the rest of his family. And so he kind of goes crazy, I guess, and he starts carving little wooden figurines. And at first the townspeople feel sorry for him, and they're like, oh, we love that he plays with our kids when we come to visit his shop because, you know, he's just so lonely and blah, blah, blah. But oh no, now like it's going too far. And he apparently never cleans his house, and so it gets filled with dirt. And then one day they are like, the townspeople are like, we need to intervene. So they go to his house and he never answers. When they finally are able to break through, they realize, oh, it's not just a little bit of dirt. Like, his house is a legit forest with poppies growing on the wall, but he's gone except for this one little statue that looks like him. But in his place is this child, which we're assuming is Der Erlkonig. Sorry, I cannot pronounce that for the life of me. Der Erlkonig is the same as Goblin King, is the same as My Austere Young Man, is the same as Wolfgang. Just different incarnations of his being. And so it's just like, what happened to the woodworker? Was he elf touched? Was he somehow part of the underground? Like, how did he go from sane to insane to disappeared? And then why is this kid in his place? And then this is really where Wolfgang meets Brother Mayhew, because he's a wild thing. And so they put him up at the local monastery, and nobody can get through to him except for Brother Mayhew. Bad things start to happen again. The townspeople are like, we need to sacrifice this kid. And then I think they burn down that monastery. But Brother Mayhew and Wolfgang get out of town and find another monastery. I think I've got too many monasteries in my head. But we end there. We never get to see anything further than after they're chased out of town and he's with Brother Mayhew. And so I was kind of hoping to get one more scene of him and a little bit more with Brother Mayhew to tie up that little end. Shadowsong and Winter Song. It's such a great concept that I would recommend people go and read it and see what they think for themselves. Maybe it's just me, maybe maybe her writing style just isn't my writing style. Go read it, tell me what you think. Do you like Leisl? Which book do you like better? Don't listen to the audiobook because, as you know, it's not that the narrator does a bad job. I just think she perpetuates the problem, and she doesn't read it with enough life and emotion for me. I'd probably give her another go. If she came out with another book, I'd try to read it just because I think she has great ideas. But depending on how I feel that execution goes, depends on if I ever try anything of hers again. That's done. See you later. Bye.